How does Olwen Cartwright transform from an outcast of the Silver Arrow Pack to the new Luna of the Moon River Pack? How will her new relationship with Alpha Landon change the future of the two packs? And how will Stela and Elijah, from the members Olwen's pack, face their new identities and challenges? Curious how Olwen turns the tide to become the new Luna? Subscribe to our channel to delve deeper into her story. Chapter 22 Official. Olwen once again did not manage to spend time alone with Alpha Landon since their visit to the clinic. Brian had been hospitalized for about a week before he was released and confined to his home, with the suspension from the warriors kicking into effect. By now, most of the pack members knew of what Ryan had done and were keeping their distance from him as well. Landon and Olwen's wolves were fortunately now more under control since being officially connected by the mate bond. But Olwen could see it each time in Landon's eyes that he wanted to hold her in his arms, kiss her or do other things to her. Unfortunately, they were either preoccupied or in a group setting, which meant they couldn't do much aside from discreetly holding hands to appease both themselves and Lark and Opal. They'd managed to go on a run together one night, though this was more for their wolves than the humans. Just like Alpha Landon was a third taller than Olwen, Lark was almost twice as large as Opal, but just like his human, he was friendly and gentle, having been excited to meet his mate. Opal had bounded over to him and returned his favor from the wolf integration activity by licking his nose, before bounding off into the forest and letting Lark give chase. The wolves spent a few hours swimming and running alongside each other before just sitting together, keeping their pelts close and enjoying the warmth. Otherwise, Pack Elijah and Stela, who were still doing their best with research, assured her that Landon was increasingly preoccupied with Pack matters or would make time for her if he could. So Olwen focused on her own project, one of which had recently come to be called Elise. After a conversation with Gamma, Josh and Kale, the three of them were now living under the same roof, with Josh and Kale occupying the upper levels and Elise in the guest room. Though Olwen had seen Elise's parents around, they never asked about where their daughter was. In fact, they seemed perfectly fine without her, which made her wonder just how much they had cared for Elise outside of trying to push her together with a high-ranking wolf. To her credit, for Ann Omega, who had been spoiled all her life, she didn't complain and seemed rather grateful to have a place to stay after being shunned by the rest of the pack. When she wasn't attempting to flirt or butter up someone else, she was rather pleasant company and could actually compete with both Josh and Kale in Mario Kart. As for how she was living her life, Olwen kept an eye on her and helped out whenever she could. Elise was slowly bringing herself out of her usual habits, as tempting as it was to fall back into what she knew. A few nights ago, when Olwen had brought her to the pack restaurant with Kale, a pack hunter had flirted with and tried to kiss her. Olwen had wanted to step in on Elise's behalf, but apparently didn't need to as she stepped away with a shake of her head. "This isn't me anymore. I'm not interested." It was a small thing, but a step in the right direction. Aside from gaming with Josh and Kale, Elise had taken to something else. Apparently, the pink dress she'd seen her buy was not exactly for the function, not in its original form. The pink dress was now sitting on a dummy in Elise's makeshift room. With several adjustments, she had replaced the original sleeves, added a sash around the waist, and some beads around the top. Someone had become a frequent guest to the Packcraft store as well, except Elise focused on fabrics, needles, and beads. "Have you not done this before? You seem like a natural." Josh had asked her out of curiosity once. Elise shook her head. "I'd read up plenty of books and watched videos, but no. My parents didn't think learning how to alter and design dresses was necessary since the ones they bought me looked fine on their own." Olwen was increasingly surprised to know she and Elise had more in common aside from just being gazer. It seemed in a way, Elise had allowed others' expectations of her to trap her from doing what she truly wanted. She was still careful not to fully let her guard down around the she-wolf though. "Olwen, please come and see me at my home. There's a pressing matter I need to address. On my way, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Olwen cycled to Landon's home, spotting his parents tending to the garden in the front lawn. Wendell, Cully, Olwen, nice to see you again. The older woman got up and gave her a hug. A lot of times when Olwen visited Alpha Landon, chances are they were already here or dropping in supposedly to check in on their son and help out a little. But Olwen didn't miss how much they liked talking to her as well. Holly in particular wasn't very subtle. At one point Olwen had been over for dinner when Holly brought Landon to the kitchen to speak with him alone, and minutes later Olwen had his mum gushing about what a keeper she was before threatening her own son to keep a hold on to her or else. Landon is waiting for you just inside, Wendell added, nodding in the direction of the door with a grin. He wasn't as oaf as his wife, but he clearly approved of her as well. Good luck. Olwen briefly wondered why their smiles were so teasing, but smiled back nevertheless and went in. Just as they said, Landon was standing in the dining room facing her, with an unreadable expression. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Olwen dipped her head, suddenly nervous. Olwen, Landon spoke evenly, his tone stern. I'm sure you know why I summoned you here today. I do. Olwen looked back up at him in confusion. I've heard rumors floating around the pack that I'll be making you my Luna before the Evergreen pack's function. Olwen swallowed as the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Alpha Landon. I assure you that I had nothing to do with the Landon fell silent for a moment before a singlecom and left his lips. Close your eyes. What? Close your eyes. Olwen, don't open them until I tell you to. The woman furrowed her eyebrows at his instruction, before she inhaled quietly and followed it. She felt sparks in her skin as Landon gently but firmly took her hands, guiding her through the house. Keeping her eyes closed, she could only try her best to follow him, her feet stepping gingerly across the floor. She heard the sound of a door being opened before Landon spoke again. Open them. The moment Olwen opened her eyes, she was greeted with the most beautiful sight. A large room, with a bed in the center. The floor was covered with natural wood paneling, with a vase on the bedside table that was filled with buttercups, as well as a few stalks of chamomile and lavender. The lighting was warm, and the furniture was primarily made of wood and painted off-white. A soft carpet covered about half of the room. Olwen took a few steps into the space, staring around in surprise and wonder. The last time she'd been to the Alpha's house, this place had been closed off for renovations. Alpha Landon, what is this? Her voice trailed off as she saw a photo sitting on the dresser. It was a photo of her, Aunt Landon, from their visit to the human town 2 months ago. She turned back to face the Alpha as he stepped closer to her. This is your room if you choose to move in with me. And this. To Olwen's surprise, Landon gently got down on one knee in front of her, holding up a box. As if you choose to officially become my mate. And this Pax Luna. He opened the box, revealing a beautiful pendant necklace. It had the shape of a crescent moon, with once a fire in the middle. Olwen covered her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. She hadn't seen this coming, but the happiness and love it sparked in her was overwhelming. Alpha Landon, this is beautiful. When did you get this? A few weeks ago. Landon admitted with a shy smile. Olwen gently knelt down, pressing her lips to his. Tears of joy rolled down her cheeks. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This isn't just because of the function, is it? No. Landon took the necklace out of its box and placed it around her neck, fastening the clasp. I've been thinking over this for a while. It was a thought I entertained the night we met. He chuckled with embarrassment at that one. But in the last few months I've carefully considered and planned for it, and with all the pack members talking about me making you the Luna, I figured it was a sign to make it official. I couldn't wait anymore. Olwen. I still don't know how the mate bond was able to form without us marking each other, especially after both of us had fated mates. But it can't be a curse if it tethered me to you. Every word made Olwen's heart higher and higher, until at last she softly placed a hand on the pendant that was now on her neck. I'm glad the bond tied me to you, Alpha Landon, she whispered softly. When you first accepted me into this pack, you looked out for me, encouraged me to pursue what I'd left behind, and made me happier than I ever have been. You never judged me for being an Omega and helped me become the best version of myself. I already admired you for being a good leader of the Moon River Pack, but now I can safely say I'm in love with you. I'd be honored to be your partner, and I promise I will do my best to support you and everyone else as the Luna of this pack. She saw Landon's eyes widen with emotion as a smile grew on his face as well. I, Olwen Cartwright, to my agent extraordinaire, mythical Olwen, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Olwen Adams, as my mate, he murmured. And I, Olwen Adams, to my agent extraordinaire, mythical Olwen, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Olwen Cartwright, as my mate. As they leaned in to kiss each other once more, they could feel the ties they'd felt growing over the months together firmly snapping into place, cementing their connection even more. Both Lark and Opal howled with joy within them. It felt right. Land on. Olwen whispered, breaking their kiss briefly. Yes, mark me. Landon stared at her in disbelief, though his excitement was also hard to conceal. You're sure? Olwen nodded resolutely. Our wolves will finalize our bond through the marking ceremony. I can't wait anymore either. I want to bear your mark. Landon. She saw the way the man bit his lip. This was the first time she'd addressed him without his title, with his gaze resting on her neck. I want to mark you, if you'll do the same to me. He spoke thickly. The image that brought to Olwen's mind sent a shudder of desire through her, and she nodded. That being the confirmation he needed, Landon carried her up in his arms, causing her to let out a gasp, before calmly setting her down on the bed in her soon-to-be room. Olwen felt her back lightly bump against the soft surface, moments before the Alpha climbed on top of her. I'm in love with you too, in case that wasn't obvious. Drawing a soft laugh from Olwen before he turned it into a moan. Compared to most fated or chosen pairs, who marked one another within a few weeks to a month, Landon and Olwen had waited almost twice as long. And now that they were at this point, they didn't hold back. Fortunately, Wendell and Holly had wisely vacated the premises just after Olwen disappeared into the house. As night fell upon them, all Landon and Olwen could see each other now. Landon asked, his voice breathless as they synchronized their movements now. Olwen agreed, tossing her head back. His scent flooded her nose completely as the Alpha leaned into her neck, kissing and sucking the spot with a low growl before finally sinking his fangs into her skin. Despite having had a fated mate before, Olwen had never been marked until now, and she let out a cry from the sharp pain that soon turned into a rush of pleasure as it spread through her body. As soon as Landon was done, Olwen rolled the two of them over and did the exact same thing, the Alpha releasing a low groan. It didn't take much longer for them to finish after that, and Olwen collapsed on top of Landon, panting heavily. It was here she took a good look at the mark she'd made on him, the head of a wolf surrounded by white flowers. Landon gently ran his hand through her and brushed it aside to stare at her mark as well. It's a wolf by a blue crescent moon, almost like the pendant I gave you, he murmured, pulling Olwen in for another kiss. Both their marks were rather faint now, but once Lark and Opal marked each other during the ceremony, they would gain their full cut. Olwen, and you do know that with your lunar ceremony occurring so close to the function, I can introduce you during the event, Landon suggested softly, running a hand through Olwen's hair. We don't have to post an official announcement on the bulletin, and I can just inform the visiting leaders that I found my Una. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Olwen looked at him curiously. If you're going to have to meet Alpha Aaron and Una Kylie, may as well give them a nice surprise, Landon said with a playful smirk. Olwen chuckled and laid on her side next to Landon, pulling the covers over them both. Sounds like a plan. Chapter 23 Lunification, can you believe it? Olwen. Stela gasped with excitement, clasping her hands as she admired her friend. To think that after all this time, you're still going to become a Luna. The function was in a week, and just as Alpha Landon had planned, Olwen's lunar ceremony and their marking ceremony would be held today. So here Olwen was, dressed in the same silver-embellished borgan that Elise had pointed out to her all those weeks ago. It was no less beautiful than it had been when she first bought it, making her resemble a princess almost. Olwen's brown hair also was styled into a waterfall braid with little pearls weaved in here and there. And to symbolize her impending status, a blue circlet with a moon. Speaking of which, Elise was here too, helping out Olwen with her makeup. Stella was chatting about things as she sat nearby in a simple dress. She didn't want to take the spotlight away from the future Luna after all, but her eyes were also watching Elise like a hawk in case she tried anything. I'm finding a lot of things still hard to believe. Trust me, Olwen admitted, seeing the way her makeup looked in the mirror. About half a year ago she'd been forced into exile from her old pack after losing her Luna position to Kylie, and now she was about to become the Luna of another. Her best friend Stella had given up her position as future beta in the Silver Arrow pack and somehow followed her here, and she and her brother found their mates in the process. She and Beta Elijah had opted to do a private marking ceremony of their own sometime after they'd moved in together, so she was currently using her mated name, Stella Atwood. They were, however, planning to also get married the human way somewhere after the Evergreen function. Olwen had already accepted Stella's offer to be her bridesmaid, and Landon the beta's best man. It did make her wonder if she would want to do the same with Landon own day. It would be pleasant, especially in that human town where they discovered they were fated for the first time. Maybe officially sign a document as Olwen Cartwright. Olwen Cartwright. She quite liked the sound of that. Gamma Josh and Kale were already living together, the two of them not hurrying along their relationship at all and just having fun. Both also had their fair share of responsibilities, the latter looking far happier with his renewed sense of belonging in the Moon River Pack. And Sylvie, who had left a husband behind in the Silver Arrow Pack and now lived alone in their home after both her children had found her mates. Olwen had checked in on her frequently, but found she wasn't that lonely. She'd made friends with some of the older she-wolves in the pack, in particular Beta Elijah's mother. She was now a frequent visitor to the bakery. Enthusiasm, and being a bit of a foodie herself, Nicole had come to rely on a lot of her thoughts when altering the bakery's menu. After she slipped into her soft grey heels, Elise and Stella helped her to the front door to await the start of the ceremony. You look great, Elise spoke softly, a genuine smile on her face. Alpha Landon is fortunate to have you as his chosen mate. Olwen smiled back at her. Stella was still skeptical about Elise, which was understandable, but, as the weeks had passed, Olwen had actually started to become fond of the she-wolf as she embraced her true self. She finished her alterations to the pink dress and was now working on a new assignment dresses for Olwen and Stella for the pack function. She had given her one simple instruction after Elise took their measurements to let her creativity flow. The door opened, and Olwen in all her regal splendor stepped out into the hall. All the pack members turned and applauded her as soft music played in the background, and Olwen began to move through the room towards Alpha Landon, who was dressed in a suit. His eyes were all on hers, and even from this distance she could see the mark she had made faintly on his neck. Tonight, they would truly cement their mate bond. Olwen arrived at the steps before Alpha Landon, and gracefully lowered herself to her knees and with her head down in respect. Olwen Adams, Alpha Landon spoke, his voice filled with pride, happiness and adoration. Ever since you came to the Moon River Pack, you have shown your loyalty, strength, and dedication to us all. I couldn't think of a more worthy she-wolf to be my mate, and my equal. Olwen blushed at the praise. Olwen Adams, do you swear that you will uphold the qualities of benevolence, faithfulness and intelligence that are expected of a Luna? I, Olwen Adams, swear that I will uphold all that is expected of me as a Luna, both for myself and the rest of the Moon River Pack. She recited the Luna's oath she was all too familiar with, from now until the day I die. You may rise. Olwen gently got up, and Alpha Landon approached her, gently taking her right hand. With a dagger, he sliced through her palm, Olwen managing to retain a calm expression. Turning her hand over, Landon bent and gently kissed her knuckles before getting back up with a bright smile. It wasn't necessarily part of the ritual, but it made Olwen blush and the onlookers in the audience let out a WWWS. The couple turned back to the people in front of them, members of Moon River Pack. Alpha Landon announced, lifting Olwen's hand up with his. I give you your Luna, Luna Olwen. The pack members erupted into loud cheers and applause, some even raising their fists in celebration. Wendell and Holly were in the front rows, nodding at their son and Olwen with joy and approval. One could imagine they'd waited for this day for a while, having been devastated after their son's original mate rejected him without even meeting him face to face, while doing so before vanishing from the Packlands. And this time, it definitely wasn't luck that brought her the Luna position. She had more than proven herself for it. Olwen felt so many emotions running through her at once as the power and authority that came with the ceremony began to flow through her. She was now officially the Luna of the Moon River Pack. Olwen waited for a while before she gently held up a hand, signaling for the audience to quiet down. She inhaled and addressed the crowd as their Luna for the first time. Members of Moon River Pack, I will remain eternally grateful to you all. When I left my old pack, I wasn't sure if I could survive. As an Omega who had never seen the wilderness outside pack territory, I lived but I struggled to. But I arrived here, and you all showed me kindness, hospitality and support when I needed it most. I will work my hardest as your Luna to repay you. There was more applause and shouts of encouragement and support. Most of the Moon River Pack had already accepted Olwen as one of their own a month after she came into their lives, and she was a perfect fit for their alpha. Just do your best. Luna Olwen, you've repaid us already just by becoming our Luna. Rule with Alpha Landon and be happy. Olwen realized that final shout had come from Kale, with Stela and Elijah beside him and grinning broadly. Gamma Josh, Delta Cassidy and Jackson were to Kale's other side, clapping loudly with congratulatory smiles on their faces as well. She waved to the crowds, and hoped that somewhere, her parents were watching and proud of her. Alpha Landon gently cupped her face and tilted her head back to face him, making her heart skip a beat. See you at tonight's marking ceremony. Tenderness in his eyes before he turned and walked off. Olwen spent the rest of the day receiving congratulatory messages from the rest of the pack members and socializing before having to start to the edge of the nearby forest to prepare for the marking ceremony. She knew that Landon was at the other end of the forest. They would both shift into their wolves under the moonlight and seek each other out by their scents, and then their wolves would mark each other and make them mates forevermore. Stela was by her side once again, helping to undo her braids. She was bubbling with excitement as she gazed at the expanse of trees in front of them. Opal, if you're in there, use that nose of yours to seek out the Alpha's wolf quickly, she encouraged with a bright smile. She knew how fast Olwen's wolf was at such activities after all. Stela held the bell that would signify the ceremony, and at the other side of the forest, so was Pack丨Elijah as he waited with Alpha Landon. Whenever you're ready, Olwen and Opal. Olwen nodded, taking off her clothes before promptly shifting into Opal. The silvery grey wolf shook her pelt a little before focusing her vision on the forest in front of her. Meanwhile, Stella's eyes glazed over as she mind-linked with Pack丨Elijah and sensed their countdown. 3.1. Your time starts now. Stela rang the bell and Opal took off into the forest. She was more excited than ever, already sniffing out their mate scent as she bounded through the trees. His scent was still weak from this distance, but Opal could sense that Lark was on the move and just as desperate as she was. I will find our mate, Olwen, the wolf promised her human, training her nose even harder. Her eyes brightened as they sensed the smell getting stronger from a certain direction, and she trotted towards a particular patch of trees. Swishing her tail, she weaved in and out of the different tree trunks, sniffing up them and figuring out where the scent was coming from. The scent was getting stronger wherever Lark was. He was nearing her. Opal could barely contain her eagerness, and she let off a yip of joy as she spotted the sandy wolf as a faint dot in the distance of the forest. Mate. She began to move faster towards Lark as Lark sensed and then saw her approach, his own golden eyes widened with joy before he bounded towards Opal. The two wolves got closer and closer to one another before meeting on a stretch of grass in a clearing. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, cheered Opal, padding up to Lark and nudging him in the side. Mate. Lark purred in response, muzzling his mate back. The two wolves circled each other before leaning in and nuzzling each other's necks, Lark growling protectively as Opal whined. And then they sank their teeth into one another at the same time. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The two wolves echoed in unison. Olwen blinked her eyes open, before sitting up in complete confusion and disorientation. She was suddenly no longer in the forest as Opal, but as herself. She was wearing a white dress, and much to her surprise, her own wolf was seated patiently in front of her. Their surroundings were bathed in some kind of overly bright light as they sat together on the grass. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, Olwen said in surprise, as the wolf dipped her head. What's going on? Where are we? The wolf looked around herself, her own eyes narrowing slightly. We're not in the real world, though. Olwen got up, seeing they were surrounded by endless fields of wheat that blew gently in the breeze. The sky above seemed blue, but she could see stars dotted among them. How? Movement from behind made both Olwen and Opal turn around. A pale blonde woman was approaching them, her bare foot lightly making noises upon the ground. Her skin looked as if it was glowing beneath her white dress, and her eyes were grey. She exuded authority and some kind of otherworldly power. Olwen Cartwright. The woman spoke in an almost dreamy soft voice, one which seemed to echo through the space they were in. Congratulations on your new position in the Moon River Pack. You are halfway on the path to regaining all which was rightfully yours, and more. Olwen stared at the woman with a dumbfounded expression on her face before she realized who she was and dropped into a kneel. You're the moon goddess, Copying her human, Opal lowered her head in respect. Chuckling, the moon goddess approached them, gently rubbing Opal's head before motioning for Olwen to rise. That I am. What are you here for? And what do you mean by I'm only halfway? Olwen questioned in curiosity. She had already been satisfied to find a new pack to call home, and considered becoming the Luna and finding another mate an extra privilege. The woman smiled at her. Your friends have done a good job trying to find information that could help to figure out what happened between Alpha Landon and you, but I'm afraid they won't be able to find any. The bond that you created is the first of its kind. The woman's cryptic words circulated around in the Olwen's brain for a while before she blinked. I created my new mate bond with Landon. How well, I might have helped with that. The moon goddess admitted. It was the aftermath of a test I gave the new leaders of the Silver Arrow Pack. Olwen eyed the woman curiously before something occurred to her. Was I the test? I will explain the full story in due time, Celine spoke, clasping her hands. But I've been watching the Silver Arrow Pack in recent times. They had noble beginnings, but the Alphas of New are allowing pride and thirst for power to corrupt their leadership in their pack. I'm sure you know of this firsthand. Recalling how Alpha Bradley had given her the ultimatum just to save face for his son, Olwen scowled and nodded. So I tested the current and future Alphas of the Silver Arrow Pack by giving you to Aaron as his mate. An Omega with a kind heart and strong spirit, the moon goddess went on. The Alphas of your old pack, especially, were responsible for pushing the belief that Homegazer do not contribute at all to the welfare of others and need to be protected. Olwen glowered at the reminder of this assumption as Opal growled next to her. Celine gave them a sympathetic look before talking again. So, how would they react if an Alpha from their own pack was mates to an Omega? Would at least one of them be able to recognize the errors in their thinking and steer the pack in a new direction? The woman sighed and shook her head, her expression turning dark with disappointment. If Aaron had accepted you as his fated mate, then all would have been well. But now, the human went against the wishes of his wolf and chose someone else because of his prejudice. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. So what's in this for me aside from being your test subject? Olwen wasn't exactly sure what to think of this situation yet. Your chance at fated mates if Aaron didn't choose you, the goddess said. I gave you a choice after Aaron had his affair and you broke your mate bond with him. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A choice to redevelop the fated mate bond with another wolf of your choosing. Celine responded simply, at which point Olwen raised an eyebrow. So you, Ray saying I, chose Alpha Landon, even subconsciously. Yes, the moon goddess nodded. The mate bond didn't take into effect immediately. I allowed it to build up over time before it finally settled into the real thing. Gave you time in case I was giving you the decision after all. Well, that explained a lot, so. Olwen swallowed. You're saying that I could have ended up with anyone else aside from Landon? Yes, Celine nodded calmly, but it doesn't change the fact that things are not finished for you. She placed a reassuring hand on Olwen's shoulder. I can't reveal everything, but Stella arriving here at the Moon River Pack was no coincidence. You and Alpha Landon will need the support of your closest allies for what is about to happen. About to happen? Olwen stared at her. You don't have to worry, Olwen. One way or another you were perhaps just always meant to be the Luna of the strongest pack in the Evergreen wilds. And their destiny has been set. Olwen. Olwen slowly blinked open her eyes. She found herself bare and draped in a cloak she'd shifted back into her human body as Landon was cupping her face and staring at her with an anxious expression. The moment their eyes met, Landon relaxed with some amount of relief. Olwen, you're awake. Landon, how long was I out? 10 minutes. The Alpha helped her up, and Olwen glanced at their necks. The marking ceremony had worked, and their marks were in full color. The brief burst of happiness was soon tempered as Olwen recalled the dream. To my agent extraordinaire, Mademoiselle Olwen, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That she had. Are you okay? Landon asked softly, gazing at her. Do you need to go to the Pack clinic? Olwen shook her head quickly. No, we should go back home. I think I saw The Moon Goddess, Chapter 20 for Function Prelude. Meanwhile, the Alpha and Lunar ceremony should have meant retirement for former Alpha Bradley. It should have meant relaxation, the opportunity to finally take a step back and let his son and his chosen mate run things. He should have been resting at home, drinking beer or watching television or something. Instead he isn't. Instead in the Alpha's office, formerly his and now his son's, working. To say he was furious at Alpha Aaron was an understatement. He was already a few months into his rule, and his leadership of the Silver Arrow Pack was less than stellar. His pack members didn't respect him, and he had no idea how to reach a level of understanding with them. Most of them just followed him because they had to. And his idiot Luna wasn't doing much better, spending time bragging and gossiping with what small circle of friends she had, and then intimidating others into getting what she wanted. When it came to actual pack matters, Luna Kylie would rather push for her own choices and refuse to compromise, resulting in many of the conferences and meetings arriving at stalemate, with important pack decisions being postponed again and again. And her reputation amongst the pack, while no longer openly addressed, might have been worse than his son's. This was all Olwen's fault. She could have accepted the amicable separation from Aaron and still retained her place in this pack. But no. She had to make a scene in her departure and cause a chain of events that resulted in Beta Caden's family leaving and the relationship between his son and his chosen mate to become strained. And now, because of all that, the Silver Arrow Pack had to admit they were unfit to hold the function this year and pass the duties of hosting of the Moon River Pack. Some of the fault is yours too, Bastion muttered ruefully. If you hadn't done that all those years ago, Tess would still be alive and Aaron wouldn't have found the drugs in your office. Shut up. Bradley reprimanded the wolf in his head. Infuriated he would mention his deceased mate at this time. Tess is already dead, and there's nothing more we can do. It was the rogues who killed her. Bastion reluctantly fell silent. Since the death of their mate, his wolf had only become more compliant to Bradley's instructions but experienced a feeling of overall numbness at the loss of Tess. While he'd had disagreements with his human over the years, the she-wolf's demise had taken its toll on him to the point where he was just like any one of the Silver Arrow Pack members. He followed Bradley's instructions because his human was the only thing he had left to live for. As wrongful as his actions had been, Alpha Aaron was currently making the rounds in an attempt to settle a few minor pack disputes, but it was his Delta and Gamma doing most of the heavy lifting, given how distracted he was at the moment. After that embarrassing incident a few months back, Luna Kylie had only given him back bed privileges a few days ago, and even now they slept separately in the same bed and still weren't intimate that much. The only exception was the she-wolf's heats, but even then they just did what was needed and they went right to being apart. On her end, Kylie maintained her disgruntlement about Alpha Aaron calling out Olwen's name during their last encounter, while Aaron couldn't risk a repeat of that to the disobedience of his wolf who was still up to his usual tricks. Had the drugs caused ours to become more rebellious? Was it his natural state? Or was it both? Anyways, it didn't take a marriage counselor to know Aaron's chosen mate was angry with him. During every pack discussion, every meeting they had with the Beta, Delta and Gamma to decide on further actions, Kylie only seemed all the more determined to oppose whatever stance the Alpha was taking just to spite him, and in the end nothing was done. A lot of duties that should have been accomplished weeks ago were still on the agenda, causing many activities in the Silver Arrow Pack to come to a standstill, and complaints to arise from certain pack members. Maybe it was because they hadn't slept together for a long while since they became a mated couple, but Kylie was starting to become less and less attractive by the day. She knew how to fight and still exuded the supposed confidence Aaron had wanted in his Luna, but she refused to interact with any of her pack members aside from her friends and family, and showed a complete lack of patience in running through the usual documents or procedures that a Luna was required to overlook. The closest thing she had to guidance was a file full of notes that Olwen had taken when she was still training here, but like hell was Kylie going to look at those? And her childish behavior towards him in official matters, just because their relationship was not going well, was beginning to irk Aaron. Yes, she is the perfect, beautiful, strong Luna you wanted, Oz mocked inside him. Congratulations. Being unable to bed his own chosen mate outside of when the heat cycle demanded it, Aaron had no choice on regular days but to relieve his tensions like a hormonal youth who had not yet found his other by himself. He had held off on the drugs the best he could after the incident to prevent Oz from spiraling even more out of control. But that didn't stop his wolf from continuing to push images of Olwen into his mind when he was alone and with Kylie during her heat. He'd ended up calling the name of his ex-mate, more than once managing to hold it off this time wherever he was with his chosen mate. Thank the goddess, but was increasingly unnerved by how little guilt he was experiencing. It was made all the more difficult since even though he'd been having an affair with Kylie, he'd still been with Olwen physically the most while the former was away at the Snowfang pack with her own fated. Before Kylie's green apple scent, Aaron had been more familiar with Olwen's lavender and honey, and the house that he and Luna Kylie now lived in had once been hers and his after all. On particular days where Kylie and him had very bitter arguments that resulted in them facing their backs to each other and falling asleep in tense silence, Aaron missed playing with Olwen's brown hair and listening to her soft snores as she lay next to him. He was confused. He couldn't be sure whether it was actually him or his wolf's actions affecting him, but he didn't feel anything for Kylie these days other than annoyance and exasperation. "You useless brat." A shout startled Aaron out of his thoughts. A distance away was Luna Kylie once again shoving Jessie to the ground with an agitated expression on her face. "Trust an Omega to miss out an item from my shopping list." Jessie cowered immediately, baring her neck to the Luna in complete fear. With a heavy sigh, Alpha Landon left Delta Jace and Gamma Edric to talk with another pack member who was having neighborly issues and approached his mate. "Kylie, you're scaring your attendant. It's her fault." The Luna snapped, her amber eyes blazing with fury. "Tell her, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Look, whatever it is you missed, I'll go and get it." Alpha Landon said, his tone flat and resigned. He turned to Jessie. "Jessie, I apologize on behalf of the Luna. She must be on edge thanks to the approaching function. You may be excused from your Omega duties for the rest of the day." Still shaking, Jessie got up and bowed. "Thank you. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Her eyes flickered to the still furious woman next to him and hastily bowed again. "Apologies again, Luna." She then quickly turned and walked off, as Kylie thrust her list into Aaron's chest. It was unfortunate, really, on Alpha Landon and Luna Kylie's behalf. When Aaron had launched the investigation regarding how a third of the pack had mysteriously come down with food poisoning, he had perfectly ignored the Omega, or more specifically, one Omega. The moment Jessie was out of earshot from the Alpha and Luna, she quickened her footsteps back to her home, eager to prepare for the next phase. Given how intimidating the then Alpha Bradley and his son could be if they just didn't attend the ceremonies, Jessie had made an agreement with certain households in the Silver Arrow Pack. Most were still going to witness the ascensioness of their new Alpha and Luna out of fear and respect for their pack, but there were also some like Edric and his family who did not want to attend it, especially after knowing the truth behind Aaron and Kylie's relationship. But they couldn't find a way out of attending without a proper excuse, and so Jessie, having worked in the pack kitchens before being placed in Kylie's employ, was able to sneak the expired food into the family's lunches the day before. Jessie had not been coerced. This was her way of secretly getting back at her employer, whose rough and irrational bouts of jealousy and anger she had to constantly endure. Jessie admittedly hadn't been very close friends to Olwen while she was still in the Silver Arrow Pack, but after being subjected to verbal and physical harassment from the New Loon, and hearing of how she and the Alpha had wronged her fellow Omega, Jessie knew she could no longer take all of the abuse without a little payback. She was able to evade suspicion on the surface by retaining the impression of an innocent, weak and sniveling Omega, just as the Alpha and Luna expected her to act like. In reality, she honestly couldn't wait to somehow escape from under Kylie's thumb. And the opportunity was going to present itself very soon. A week later, the Moon River Pack was halfway across the wilds and would have taken much longer for the Silver Arrow Pack party to reach by foot or car, so the fastest option was to use the private helicopter. The aircraft touched down in an open patch, and Alpha Aaron, Enthusiasm, Luna, Kylie and Beta Caden all dismounted from it into a car they had arranged from the hosting pack to take them the rest of the way to the territory. Aaron and Caden were dressed in specially tailored suits for the occasion, with Aaron's covered in silver embroidery patterns and an arrow pin on his lapel. As the car moved, however, Beta Caden was still noticeably distant, his eyes staring out of the window at the passing trees. Aaron did feel a little bad for him considering his entire family had deserted him, but he needed to be present sooner or later. "I'm looking forward to the function this year, honey," Luna Kylie interrupted with a smile. She sat next to Alpha Aaron and gently hooked her arm around his. "This is my first year as Luna, so you'll get to introduce me to everyone." Inwardly sighing, Aaron turned to her and smiled back, suppressing the growls that Haas was making. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Babe, I'll make sure we're both on our best behavior tonight." Regardless of how bad their relationship was at the moment, both him and Kylie knew it was important not to let that show in front of the other packs. They were still from the Silver Arrow Pack after all, and they were the strongest pack in the Evergreen wilds. The car joined in a line that was making its way into the Moon River Pack by its main entrance, with pack members guarding the borders and examining each group of guests that entered. Aaron briefly had a flashback to the last time he had come here. It had been when his father was still the Alpha, and he had brought him along to witness and learn as he negotiated a trade deal with then Alpha Wendell. Compared to then, the pack looked more put together and well maintained. Facilities had clearly been upgraded or refurbished, with the addition of different flowers and plants added life and complemented the modernist vision of the place. The car stopped near a young man at the entrance with hair in a very similar shade to Kylie's, except his eyes were grey, just like Olwen's. "Ours Unveiling me," and Aaron quickly shoved away the strange feeling it gave him as he rolled down his car window. "Welcome to the Moon River Pack. I am Gamma Joshua. And you are?" "Good evening, Gamma Joshua." Alpha Aaron leaned slightly back in the car to motion to Kylie and Caden. "We are Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie and Beta Caden from the Silver Arrow Pack. The Silver Arrow Pack. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." As the Gamma filled in an attendant's sheet, his eyes flickered over each of their faces. It was surely part of normal procedure, but it felt more like he was scrutinizing all of them. At last, after 2 long minutes, the Gamma leaned back, satisfied, and pointed the car ahead. "Go on in, and enjoy the function," he spoke with a smile. "The parking area is just outside the event center, Thank you, Gamma Joshua. As the Alpha Aaron rolled his window back up and the car headed off into the Moon River Pack, Josh turned away and rubbed the back of his neck, taking a short reprieve before the next car showed up. He was fortunate he had taken a shower that morning before coming to oversee things, so he didn't have kale scent all over him right now. He had finally gotten to see the Alpha who threw away his fated mate, Olwen, because she was an Omega, the infamous Luna that he threw away his fated mate for, and the Beta who chose his Alpha over his family, his future father-in-law. Gamma Josh did not know what to make of that. Chapter 25 Function. Since the inception of the Evergreen Wilds packs, there had been 2 more packs that splintered off from others, resulting in a grand total of 7 packs. The Silver Arrow Pack, the Moon River Pack, the Fireclaw Pack, the Snow Fang Pack, the Willow Creek Pack, the Ocean Gem Pack, and the Night Ridge Pack. As Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie and Beta Cade and entered the event hall, quite a number of leaders from other packs had already arrived. Recognizing some faces from the function his father had him attend the year prior, he approached a few to introduce his Luna. Beta Cade, meanwhile, wandered away to the drinks table. Alpha Aaron, congratulations on your appointment. Alpha Frederick greeted him with a smile, the 2 of them shaking hands. Aaron was in a good spot for now. The Night Ridge Pack was the most newly formed out of the Evergreen Wilds packs and relied the most on the Silver Arrow Pack. Alpha Frederick, nice to see you again after so long. I hope the Night Ridge Pack is holding up well after the small epidemic you had last year. Alpha Frederick nodded. Fortunately, yes. He guided a beautiful woman in a black dress standing next to him forward. I'm sure you recall my lovely mate, Luna Olivia. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Alpha Aaron dipped his head and shook Luna Olivia's hand as well, before doing the same thing and bringing Luna Kylie forward. It was clear she had been waiting for her first introduction, and this is my own mate, Luna Kylie. Wonderful to meet you, Luna Kylie. Alpha Frederick shook the woman's hand, albeit with a slightly puzzled smile. Though I recall that you had a different woman with you during last year's function. Luna Kylie's smile froze and Alpha Aaron quickly had to come up with something. Yes, he explained, trying to keep his voice calm and measured. But something unfortunate occurred, and as of now she's no longer part of the Silver Arrow Pack. We don't know where she is. Oh, I see. Alpha Frederick did not seem very satisfied with that answer, mild anyways. Regardless, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Alpha Aaron spent a while chatting with Alpha Frederick on some trivial matters, the latter clearly trying to butter him up for some agreement related to his pack security, while Luna Kylie and Luna Olivia talked themselves. Alpha Frederick and Alpha Aaron. Aaron turned to recognize the Alpha and Luna of the Fireclaw Pack walking over to them, the Luna's belly clearly showing a pregnancy. Alpha Silas, how have you been? Alpha Frederick shook his hand before Aaron did the same. I've been doing well. Alpha Silas responded warmly, taking his mate's hand and guiding her alongside him. Pack operations are going smoothly. So most recently, I've been focusing on growing my family with Luna Quinn. Congratulations to both of you. Luna Olivia exclaimed, genuinely happy for both of them as she lightly embraced Quinn. The 2 women seemed to be on rather good terms. Yes, congratulations to you both. You deserve happiness. Alpha Aaron said, when Kylie interrupted behind him. Yes, perhaps it is a great match if the Alpha wishes to have many children. Alpha Silas raised an eyebrow at Luna Kylie with a skeptical and curious expression on his face. I beg your pardon. Luna Quinn is an Omega, is she not? Luna Kylie asked, smiling ignorantly. That's why you mated with her, to produce her and then some. An awkward silence fell upon the group before Alpha Silas spoke with a disbelieving chuckle. Luna Kylie. I'm not sure what you've heard about me and my Luna, but I can assure you that Luna Quinn is indeed my fated mate. Kylie nodded. Well, good job at making the best out of what the moon goddess gave you. Even Alpha Frederick was speechless at this point, and he hurried away to join another leader in conversation. Looney Olivia, who still had a protective arm around Luna Quinn, gave Kylie a barely concealed glare before leading the latter further away to sit down. Quinn herself was just in disbelief and confused by what had just occurred, her eyes darting to the ground. Alpha Silas was still smiling, but this time the grin did not quite reach his eyes. I didn't settle for my mate, if that's what you're implying, he replied, shooting that same warning smile at Alpha Aaron, who had the sense to feel some amount of second-hand embarrassment. Now, if you excuse me, I have things to attend to. He turned and strode away, sitting next to his Luna at that table and clasping her hands in a show of comfort and support. You should have held your tongue. I told you that Silas really cares for his mate. Alpha Aaron whispered to Luna Kylie, still trying to look cheerful for appearances. I was just stating the facts, Luna Kylie replied with an innocent smile. Months ago that smile would have melted Aaron like a popsicle in the hot summer, but now it did nothing. Why else would such a capable alpha accept an omega for his mate? Don't make assumptions. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Aaron muttered, unsure of what to tell Kylie at this point. He didn't recall her being this blatant about her opinions. Perhaps she'd only started becoming like this after she became the Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack. Luna Kylie headed off to chat with someone else, while Alpha Aaron accepted a small glass of champagne from a server. As he sipped the drink, his eyes fell upon Silas and Quinn once again. The woman was leaning her head on Silas's shoulder with a smile, and the Alpha's hand was gently resting upon her belly. Sooner or later, Aaron would have to try for an heir to the Silver Arrow Pack. But as much as he tried to picture himself starting a family with Kylie, it was difficult. Being intimate with Kylie was still an issue that needed solving thanks to his wolf, and now that he thought about it, he wasn't sure if she would make the best mother. If an adult pack member could make her lose her composure so easily, what about a young child crying for milk? He could have had that with Olwen. Oz growled ruefully as Aaron continued to watch Silas and Quinn, and risk weakening the pack. There's a reason the Fireclaw pack isn't the strongest. You still think it's solely because they're Lunas and Omega, his wolf scoffed. You're no better than Kylie. You just knew to keep your mouth shut. Aaron frowned and sipped his champagne again, but he couldn't help imagining it. Olwen, his mate and Luna, and children that were the perfect combination of their features. They could have been happy. He then blinked and suppressed that thought. I've made my decision, he reminded himself, as he walked towards Kylie, who was conversing with Luna Tegan of the Willow Creek pack on something related to fashion. As Tegan walked away, Aaron placed a hand on Kylie's hip. How are you enjoying the new atmosphere, the happy doll? He murmured into her ear and was pleased to see her shiver slightly. The Moon River Pack have done a better job hosting this function than I thought, Kylie replied, nodding to the decorations, the way the place was set up, and the soft music as the other leaders milled around, and socialists before dinner was to start. I overheard some hearsay from the kitchens. Apparently, Elful recently found himself a Luna. Aaron raised an eyebrow curiously at this piece of information. He hadn't interacted much with Alpha Landon, the last time being at the function last year where he spoke with Olwen. However, as the only alpha in the Evergreen wilds who did not have a Luna, this was interesting news. Why didn't anyone hear of this sooner? Kylie shrugged, sipping at her own glass. I'm not sure. The kitchen staff didn't mention her by name either, only that she's rather beautiful, and immediately captured Alpha Landon's heart. They also talked about all the support and contributions she's made to the Moon River Pack in recent times, including to the function itself. The function. It made sense for the mysterious new Luna to have been responsible for helping to put together this major event, though from the sound of things her appointment had only just happened recently. I suppose we'll get a chance to find out who she is later, Alpha Aaron said, kissing Kylie's cheek and making her giggle. The sound made something in his stomach turn, but he tried to ignore it. Thank you for informing me this, Kylie. Maybe this night wouldn't be so bad after all. If Aaron could just take care of most of the socializing and Kylie stuck to topics she knew. If it isn't the newly established Alpha and Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack. Aaron stiffened briefly before he recognized the couple heading over to him and Kylie. Alpha Maxwell and Luna Yvonne of the Snowfang Pack. Hello again. He bowed lightly to the two of them, already getting the feeling that they weren't here to exchange simple pleasantries. The pair made no attempt to shake their hands, both gazes moving from Alpha Aaron to Luna Kylie. Nice to see you again, Kylie. Luna Yvonne smiled at her, but there was no warmth in it. Though I wasn't expecting our next meeting to be under such circumstances. I mean either. The normally confident Kylie was floundering a little beneath the ironically scorching gazes of the leaders of the Snowfang Pack, her eyes dropping to the floor. So Alpha Maxwell said, looking at Kylie as if he was about to reprimand a child. You reject Oliver without a single explanation as to why, and months later turn up here at the function as the Silver Arrow Pack's Luna. I'm impressed you still dared to show your face. Miss Paxton. Kylie swelled and didn't answer, and Alpha Aaron was obliged to speak up for his mate. Alpha Maxwell, let's not make a scene. This is supposed to be a sociable, light-hearted event for the pack leaders after all. Putting an arm around Luna Kylie's shoulders, he gave the older Alpha a glare, reminding him who exactly was leading the strongest pack in the forest. After a moment, Alpha Maxwell took a step back, but his gaze towards Kylie was still no less frosty. Very well. Let us hope that the new Luna of the Moon River Pack will be a welcome change. He and his wife turned and walked off to their seats. Are you all right? Aaron looked to his mate in concern. Kylie managed a smile as Maxwell and Yvonne headed away. Yes, I'm sure I'll be fine. This is the first time they've seen me since I left the Snowfang Pack. Aaron gently tucked a strand of hair behind Kylie's ear, despite the turmoil his inner self was having. They had to present a united front. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks to your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. They stayed standing for a while, talking with the other Alphas and Lunas that they had not angered in an attempt to salvage the already unraveling situation. Unfortunately, they were wholly unprepared for just how much further things would crumble. Presenting the beta of the Moon River Pack and his mate. As the leaders lightly applauded, Alpha Aaron wondered why such an announcement was being made for Landon's second-in-command. And then the couple themselves walked into the event hall, Pack Elijah and Stela Atwood. There was the distinct noise of Kylie choking on her drink. Elijah looked just as Aaron recalled, dressed in a suit and blue tie. He had cufflinks with simile blue accents and a single crescent moon earring. But then there was his mate. And it was no doubt that it was the same Stela who had been in line to become Aaron's beta, before she'd exposed the truth of his and Kylie's relationship and abandoned the Silver Arrow Pack with her brother and mother. Sections of Stela's dark hair were weaved into a braid behind, as she practically glided across the polished floor in an off-shoulder dress the color of the galaxy. Small stars glittered on the bodice and skirt, constellations shining faintly on the translucent sleeves. Stela herself was linking arms with Pack Elijah, waving at and greeting all the people who gathered around them both. When she finally came to Alpha Aaron and Luna Kylie, her smile was almost mocking with the amount of genuine joy it contained. Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie, long time no see. Stella. Aaron said, staring at Stella with an absolutely dumbfounded expression on his face. Even as the Beta's daughter, she'd never dressed or acted like this in the Silver Arrow Pack. There were so many questions he wanted the answer to, but he couldn't cause a commotion in front of all the other leaders. Yes, Stella nodded her head. Oh, and this is my mate, Pack Elijah. Although, if I'm not wrong, you might have met him before. Alpha Aaron, Luna Kylie. Her mate dipped her head at both him and Luna Kylie, who seemed rather incredulous. You seriously cannot be mated to another beta? Kylie accused, eyeing up both Elijah and Stella with suspicion. Considering you left the Silver Arrow Pack when you were training to become one, perhaps you coerced. Kylie, not now. Alpha Aaron hissed to her, but the damage was done as Elijah had taken to quick strides and gotten all into her space. Never mind the fact that she was supposed to be Luna of the Silver Arrow Pack. There was no way Elijah would take it quietly if she insulted his mate. Don't you dare talk like that about my partner, Elijah growled, glaring at Kylie. His eyes shifted to Ellis's ivy green. I'm not the one who dishonored the moon goddess and slept with someone else's mate. Eyes darting around the room and quickly noticing some of the attendees were watching their exchange, Alpha Aaron tightened his grip on Kylie's arm and awkwardly stepped in between her and Elijah. Apologies, Luna Kylie is not herself today. Trying his absolute best to retain his polite smile, but I heard that the Moon River Pack has finally managed to find themselves a new Luna. What's that all about? Stella stepped forward to calm her own husband with a hand on his shoulder, keeping her eyes fixated on Aaron and a still rather angry Kylie behind him. She's quite something, I'll say. But I believe Alpha Landon will want to introduce himself in due time. She replied cryptically, not really answering Aaron's question. Her eyes flickered behind Aaron, spotting her father staring at her, with wide eyes and looking a bit like a kicked puppy. Now if you excuse us, Pack Elijah and I need to go chat with the other guests. Have a good evening. To my agent extraordinaire, Marlene Nelban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The couple swept away in the opposite direction. Why that? Kylie seethed, and she looked as if she wanted to shift and lunge at her former packmate. Kylie, not in front of all the guests. Aaron warned her, and the woman begrudgingly fell silent. He decided it was the best time to go and find the table. All the guests had arrived by now, and Alpha Landon had just emerged on the balcony above the dining room. His suit was a deep blue with a crescent moon pinned to his lapel, with embroidered patterns from his left shoulder. He began to speak into a microphone just as Aaron Kylie sat down. Good evening to you all, and welcome to this year's Evergreen PAX function. First and foremost, I would love to thank the Silver Arrow for entrusting such an important event to our hosting this year. We can only hope that we've done it justice. There was a smattering of respectful applause for the leaders of the Silver Arrow Pack, Aaron glancing over to see Pack still staring at the table where his daughter and her mate were, and Luna Kylie straightening herself and trying to look dignified despite her actions thus far indicating otherwise. This could not get any worse. Before we begin this year's event, Alpha Landon spoke, his voice ringing out calmly through the hall. I would like to make a formal announcement. Normally, the Alpha would give the speech kick-starting the annual function, but this year, I would like to give the opportunity to my new Luna. Murmurs of excitement, curiosity and speculation drifted through the leaders below. Even Pack, who had been preoccupied staring after Stella, perked up at this news. Her Luna ceremony was held just last week, so I thought it would be better to formally announce her tonight. Alpha and uncontinued, His gaze swept over everyone, stopping at Erin and Kylie in particular. Though she has been part of the Moon River Pack for a short time in comparison to myself, she has been nothing short of wonderful. Her presence has become a source of encouragement, comfort and strength for not just myself, but her fellow pack members. The members of the Moon River Pack, not just the higher-ups, but the waiting staff, the chefs in the kitchen, the attendants helping out around the hall, all stopped to applaud their alpha at this. Erin observed the atmosphere and felt surprisingly impressed. Whoever this new Luna was, she was well loved. After my fated mate rejected me years before, I never thought I would find someone else. And yet I did. Alpha Landon continued, his blue eyes filled with adoration. I thank the moon goddess for bringing her my way and letting her be a part of my life. He glanced behind him with a warm smile on his face, before he turned back to the audience below him. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce my mate. He stepped aside, and a radiant figure in a light blue dress emerged from behind him. The moment her grey eyes met Erin's, he felt all the colour drain from his face. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you all, Olwen Cartwright of the Moon River Pack. The video ends here, but the story goes on. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.